Welcome to Podcapers, the official podcast of A Place to Hang Your Cape. And this week, step away from the being of unimaginable darkness, please. We're talking about Sam Hain! Cue the music! Hello there, Capers, and as I said, welcome to Podcapers, the official podcast of A Place to Hang Your Cape. My name is Bron James, and this is the show where we talk about various geek and nerd-related topics, and I'm joined each week by a very special different guest. I am joined this week by an author of the macabre and mysterious. Give it up, Capers, for Bron James! How you doing, Bron?
Hello, good sir.
You doing okay?
Yeah, not too bad. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Very excited to talk about this book. However, before we talk about Sam Hain, we have to talk about you. And can I just say, Bron, you are a motherfucker to Google.
I do moonlight as a basketball player.
Yeah, I tried. I mean, Google asked me, when I typed in Bron James, it asked me, did you mean LeBron James? And I said, no, Google. No, I did not mean LeBron James. Believe it or not, I left those two letters out on purpose. I am not looking for the upcoming star of Space Jam 2. I'm looking for Bron James. And it ignored my direct request to speak to you. It just kept on coming with LeBron James. I couldn't find anything. Thankfully, you provided links to relevant sites for me to look up your stuff. But it was a struggle. You did not make things easy on me.
I like to lurk in the shadows.
Yeah, but I'm trying to find out more about you. And Google is usually my friend. And it betrayed me. I am not looking to speak to the bit part actor on that fucking train wreck movie. I'm not.
Why not?
Well, because... Well, not... Okay, usually I am, just not in this instance. Right now, I'm trying to find more about you. So, seeing as I am bereft of my usual research, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself? Who are you? What do you do? What's your place in the cosmic pantheon?
Oh god, shine the light in my eye for the interrogation, why not?
Who are you? What's your date of birth? What's your mother's maiden name?
3rd of February, 1992. Yeah, actually, that's a good place to start. In the beginning, I was born.
And humanity has been on the decline ever since. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, pretty much.
Wait, no, that's my birth.
Slowly succumbing to decay and entropy.
I was born a couple of months after you, so that would probably be the start point. Somewhere between that time period, something went horribly wrong.
It was my first encounter with the transdimensional.
God, yeah. So you're a novelist, obviously, but you've done quite a few other things. You're doing quite a few other things.
Yeah, I started out life with the kind of concept of a career as an actor. Yeah. And that's what I purely trained in, and I got a few jobs in, bit of stage, bit of film and television kind of stuff. Just small bit part kind of things.
You were there, you had a presence, you treaded the boards.
Indeed. And there was a point where the acting was a little bit thin on the ground. So I began working on my own scripts to essentially shoot them on a shoestring budget kind of thing. And they progressively got more and more out of hand from what I originally intended.
As a writer myself, I can attest to how easily it is for a script to get out of control. Trust me on this. It's like, Scott, we don't have the budget for 16 UFOs blowing up Downing Street, but it's my vision!
I think that's everyone's vision at the moment.
We're not talking about that! Anything but that!
I'm trying my best to forget. I
think we're all.
But yeah, so I was working on this script thing, and I presented it to a few producers, and they said, it's great, we like what you've got going, but could you perhaps trim down some of the scene descriptions? Meanwhile, I'd rambled on for a good couple of pages describing the environment.
You're an Alan Moore type writer, aren't you? You're one of those bastards.
Oh, yes. An editor's nightmare.
Oh God! I mean, I like your writing based on the stuff you sent me, and I like Alan Moore. But I've read some of his scripts. Like I remember studying actually in university when I was studying my for my master's degree up here in Edinburgh. we examined Alan Moore's script for Batman. I think was it No, it was the Killing Joke. It was the Killing Joke. And just remember that first panel with the Batmobile pulling up to Arkham and the puddles and the rain and stuff. If you ever read that book, that's like 5 pages. It's ridiculous. It's like, Alan, baby, it's just the opening shot. This is not fucking Citizen Kane. We don't need to. Even Citizen Kane didn't need to spend that much time with establishing shots of his fucking mansion. Like, we get it. He lives in a big house. He has a zoo. Good for him. Let's get to the Rosebud, please.
But it's kind of important to set the scene, isn't it? And, like, bore most people to death with your scene descriptions.
Maybe. You're establishing an atmosphere, you know? You're constructing a world in your narrative.
Precisely. And that's why I sort of moved on to literature rather than doing script work, because, quite frankly, no one had the patience to go through a bunch of scene descriptions. But when reading a book, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, I found, actually for me, it's sort of the opposite. I did dabble with sort of entertaining the idea of writing a novel or writing short stories, and I tried it, and as much as I love reading books, I'm not good at writing them, I think. I don't have, ironically, I don't have the patience for writing a novel. It's because when I'm writing a script, I like to be snappy and to the point. Here's what's going on, here's what happened, now let's get to the dialogue, which is my favourite bit. And when it comes to writing a novel, you have to spend lots of time establishing, the scene, the mood, characters' thoughts and movements and everything like that. And it's all very, it's very, even if it's not particularly poetic, it's very poetic, and it's very, as you say, and I just don't have the patience for it. I'm an immediate person. I want immediate satisfaction right here and now. Thank you very much. So just say, even if it's not very poetic, sometimes you have to be very poetic, which is something that, may I say, you do very well in Sam Hain.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yes, I think we should probably move on. So, I think we started talking about Sam Hain. So first of all, a little bit of backstory. Sam Hain, obviously a pun on the...
a pan?
A pan? It's a pan. No, it's a pun. I think you'll find it fries very nicely. No, that's what you mean by cooking the books. No. It's...
Damn it, that was too good a pun.
It's a pun on the Celtic proto-Halloween festival, Samhain, as it's called up here in Scotland. I know it's called, it's pronounced other ways in other parts of the UK and other parts of the world. But up here in Scotland, we call it... It's spelled differently. It's like Samhain, but we pronounce it Samhain.
Yeah. It like depends on the different various Celtic tribes and how they chose to spell it and say it, really.
Yeah, because Celtic isn't a single determined language. It's lots of different things. Like there's Irish Celtic and there's like Welsh Celtic, Scots Celtic, even like French Celtic is like with the Bretons and stuff like that. And I mean, I'm really into Halloween, and I'm really into the concept of Samhain, because the idea of it's one of like 4 Celtic festivals meant to denote the passing of the season. So there's Samhain. You know what? Hang on. I've got them written down somewhere because we created characters based around this. Not like I haven't stolen for you. I promise.
I was gonna say, stealing ideas, man. What are you doing?
No. Okay. So it's the fourth. This is something I can be able to do. It's Samhain. I'm definitely pronouncing these other ones wrong, but here we go. Beltane, Imbolc, and Lugnasa. I know that's not how you pronounce them, but that's how they're written. And they're each of them for the different seasons. So Samhain is from the passing of autumn into winter. And Beltane, I believe, is the passing of spring into summer. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one that's around like the May festival kind of atmosphere. And then you've got the other ones in the middle, like Yule and Mabon and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Yeah, because we're very up on that up here in Scotland. I mean, I always attend the Fire Festival up here in Scotland. Have you ever been to the Fire Festival here in Scotland for Sir Wayne?
No.
Oh,
I can't say I have.
It's a lot of fun if you're into that stuff. Basically, big procession, big parade down the Royal Mile, big old street in the middle of Old Town in Edinburgh, which, as you may know, is the most haunted city in the UK.
Oh, yes.
And it's basically just a bunch of half-naked and sometimes actually naked pagans with lots of paint all over their bodies, strolling down the street, flinging fire around, and it's a lot of fun.
I was gonna say, that actually sounds like the perfect way to spend an evening.
Yeah, and then they go with procession. There's a big old, I would say, a show put on, as it were. Big old fire, and then they leave the city and they fuck off to a big hill somewhere. And they do stuff which I have never seen because, frankly, I'm not willing to go that far into the countryside with a bunch of half-naked neo-pagans. I'm sorry, no offense to the neo-pagans. I know you're not going to do anything wrong, but I'm not willing to take that chance. I've seen that movie. I will not be the guy in that movie.
It depends how far down the rabbit hole you wish to venture.
I do not wish to venture down the rabbit hole. Trust me, I'm fine in my Halloween costume in the Royal Mile, surrounded by lots and lots of people. I mean witnesses. I mean people. It can be very disconcerting for people. Like, I remember the first time I actually attended. I got off a bus to go to the festival. I stepped off, and there were a bunch of pagans outside of the bus. Some might say waiting. I'm not going to pass judgment. And as soon as they put the bus,
in wait.
And they just leapt out and sort of. The only word I could describe it is roared at me. This half-naked, painted neo-pagan roared at me, and I didn't know what to say, so I just paused for a second and I said, "And good evening to you too," and then I walked away because my middle-class British nature can't contend with that sort of anarchy.
Terribly sorry, roaring pagan. Would you like a cup of tea, perhaps?
Don't terribly sorry. I don't speak Druid. I do apologise. It's. I say middle class. I'm not really middle class, but I just sound like it, so I play it up. God, and so it's a lot of fun. The only problem is if you're not a big fan of crowds, if you're very agoraphobic and you're not a big fan of like being stuck in a crowd, don't go because there are a lot of people there every single year. But if you're not having no problem with that and you still like that sort of thing, I highly, highly recommend it. Next time you're in Scotland around All Hallows Eve, check it out.
That is going to be on my agenda.
Absolutely. It's one of the things I think people in the UK should do, or if you're even visiting the UK around that time, you should do at least once, because it's a lot of fun, and it's something that it's a sight to behold. I'll tell you that much. It because I don't think a lot of people quite especially outside of the country quite get how the old religion still maintains somewhat of a presence.
Yeah, it's actually something how interwoven with our culture it actually is.
Because there are no
it's
more.
There in all of our festivals and so on.
Yeah, like the May festivals, Harvard festivals, and stuff like that. And Halloween itself, as we say, it's based off of that old Celtic tradition. So it is very much interwoven with our society, and we know that the Judeo-Christian religions often co-opt certain pagan aspects from all over the world and incorporate that in the religion to ease the transition for the heathens. But because we know that there are no more there are no more old druids around, but there are still very much neo-druids and neo-pagans and stuff like that, and it's very much a thing. I actually remember I was friends with a guy at school, and religion entered the topic somewhat as it does with teenagers when you first talk about stuff like that. And at the time, I was atheist, but I still thought of myself as Church of England, because Church of England, they'll take anyone. It's the margarine of religions. Like, you don't have to believe. Just, turn up once a year, give a can of beans at the Harvest Festival, and you're good. You're golden, front seat in heaven next to Gandhi. They don't ask much. And this guy said to me, like, he's not Christian, he's pagan. And I remember distinctly him saying that because that was the first time I'd ever heard the word pagan. It had never come up before in any conversation I'd ever had with another human being. It's like, oh, okay. Don't know what that means, and I didn't ask any follow-up questions. It was years before I actually did any research into, the proper
You just all
historical...
sat there, nodded politely, and went, yeah.
Yeah, because
okay.
because when you're younger, I mean, I was a teenager at the time, but still, when you're younger, you hear a word, you just sort of automatically absorb it, and you don't really ask any questions. Or maybe I don't ask any questions because I'm stupid and uninquisitive. Oh god! I mean, so what did you have any particular?
That's the man doing the interview.
Great way to set the tone for the interview. So did you have any particular influence or relationship or knowledge of any sort of those sort of Celtic traditions or pagan traditions when you were growing up or before you started developing this concept?
I mean, to a degree, because like I was saying a second ago about how it's interwoven with our culture, I grew up in the countryside down south, and the countryside is simultaneously beautiful and incredibly weird.
Yeah,
that's where all of it goes on. That's where the magics of the woods weave their way.
As someone who's also spent a lot of time in the country, I've lived in lots of places in the UK, but I've spent a lot of time in the countryside. From the ages of 11 to 18, I lived in the Cotswolds. I've spoken about this before. In fact, many episodes ago, I was talking with the Rivers of London series author Ben Aronovich, talking about how the countryside is actually pretty fucked up. Even excluding magical elements, fucked up shit happens.
Buses come every half an hour. It's archaic.
Oh my god, the corner shop is closed on a Sunday!
That's true heresy.
Absolutely. It is, because, it's true everywhere in the world. The countryside and the city will always have different and unique cultures. Even small towns, or these slightly larger towns, have very different atmospheres and different cultural contexts for certain things. I mean, I remember actually, because as I say, I didn't grow up in the Cotswolds necessarily, but I did spend a lot of time there when I was a teenager. And I remember leaving that and then moving to university, and I went to university in Southampton, which is very much an urban place. And I remember going to the local Asda to get the food, as you do, and that was the first time I'd ever seen, like, aisles of food that were purely, like, halal and stuff like that, and catered to different cultures, other than, English, which sadly does include curry, because we have co-opted that shit as well.
It's part of the imperial mentality.
Indeed.
Oh, look, that's a cool invention. Ours now.
Cultural appropriation, it's the backbone of our society. And it wasn't a shock, but it was a bit of a culture like, ooh, okay, fine. And it's little things like that, like sometimes giant thinking, oh, right, this is a different place with different ways of doing things. And, you hear in Edinburgh about all sorts of stuff, bad stuff, happening to people. There's violence and there's drugs and stuff. And yet I remember, actually talked about that with Ben Aronovich as well, the one time something violent happened in the Cotswolds that I remember was, actually I wasn't there for that, but it happened near my school where my dad used to work. And an old woman was found dead with her head decapitated and missing.
Fucking hell.
Yeah, listeners to the show will remember that story because no doubt it's burned into their brain. Oh god, why did he mention that? I thought this was a fun podcast. No! Sometimes we talk about dark shit! And yeah, it happens. And people forget about it. People think like, oh, it's all like Agatha Christie. Agatha Christie? No, Agatha Christie.
Agatha Christie?
Agatha Christie is something else entirely.
That's if you have a special revelation at the end of the story.
Oh, jeez, Poirot, what are you doing? No! Hastings doesn't like that! Anyway.
It was I this whole time. Agatha!
Oh, God. No. Oh, you think like a twist? I was thinking of something else entirely. Oh, that's really says something about me and my mind. Oh, no, we revealed something. We need to move on swiftly. Right, so what we're trying to make is countryside, whacked up shit happens. city whacked up shit happens, and this is very much Sam Hain, an urban fantasy novel or series of novellas, as it were.
Yes, indeed. Like, weird stuff is pretty much everywhere.
Right. So are these time to talk about Sam Hain properly now? So when exactly did you first come up with the concept? Not just talk about books in general, writing novels, like the actual Sam Hain. Also, this is what I'm going to write about.
That was around about 2012. And this was at the time that the script metamorphosed into a short story. And I was trying to figure out what I was doing with it, where it was going, how it was going to work out. And it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was laying awake. For no particular reason other than the fact I just couldn't sleep.
Because you're a writer, and writers stay up until the wee hours of the morning. It is fact.
Precisely. I do my best work at like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and then can't function before midday normally. But I was thinking about this, and the word Samhain just popped into my head. And I thought, Sam Hain, that'd be a funny name for an occult detective. And I chuckled to myself, and then I didn't think anything more of it. And I think it took another couple of months before I realised that idea lended itself so perfectly to this kind of weird, esoteric, supernatural story thing. And ran from there.
Yeah, I am surprised no one's come up with that before. It seems fairly obvious, and yet no one has done it yet, at least not that I'm aware of. And so it is a perfect name for an occult detective, as you say. And I'm so glad the story doesn't just, like, play up on the name pun constantly. Sam Hain is way more than his name. In fact, it only really gets mentioned, like the connection between Sam Hain and Sawain, once in the whole story of Volume 1. As far as I remember.
I believe so, actually, yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm really glad you mentioned it and then you just moved on and you focused on the story and the characters. That was very good of you. Now, I have some good news and I have some bad news. Which one do you want first?
Depends how bad the bad news is. And how good the good news is. Will it soften the bad?
The good news is very good. The bad news is not that bad.
We'll begin with the bad.
Sam Hain Volume 1, I am sorry to say, I found rather derivative. I saw a lot of things that I'd seen in lots of other stories and lots of connections to other things that I recognised instantly. And it kind of took me out of it for a little while. The good news is that Sam Hain Volume 1 is fucking superbly written. I love the way you wrote this story. And I've always maintained that it doesn't matter the story, it doesn't matter the idea, it's the execution. You have executed this story and all its little components that I think can clearly be traced back to other things amazingly. It is. I honestly think this is a delight to read, and it's because like there's two different kinds of books for me. There's the books that are good, that I think that have definitely good stories, but don't really suck me in writing wise, like the style. And then there are books that are good, where the writing style just sucks me in completely and utterly. The best example I can think of for this is J.K. Rowling and the Harry Potter series, because I mean, obviously people love those books, but maybe some people out there don't. But no one can deny they are fantastically written, and I think Sam Hain Volume 1 is comparable to that level of talent.
Oh, bloody hell. Well, thank you. That's quite an accolade.
Yeah, I swear, I'm not saying that just to soften the blow of the fact that I think it's derivative. And here's the thing, though. It's derivative in the beginning. By the end of Volume 1, by the end of the last sort of capitulated story, Convergence, it feels like the Sam Hain mythos, as it were, has its very own unique identity. That whole derivative thing does not last long. It's very, very obvious when you start reading, I am not going to lie to you, but as things goes on and you get sucked into this world and become absorbed in the story, it just works. It works, and you don't care anymore. You don't remember the fact that it like, I'll be honest, this reminds me of things like Constantine, Sherlock, Doctor Who. Honestly, the list goes on. But by the end of the story, I'm thinking, this reminds me of Sam Hain. It has its own unique identity.
Oh, well, I'm very pleased to hear that. And it's funny you say, like, with Constantine and Doctor Who and Sherlock, because they were all pretty much catalysts for the idea itself. All forms of inspiration that kind of sort of edged me into actually writing in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, because there's nothing wrong with having inspiration, so there's nothing wrong with being influenced by things, and we all know there's no such thing as originality anymore. It's not possible. Like, we've got, like, 5 stories, if I remember correctly, in our entire, like, zeitgeist, our entire human collective cultural unconsciousness. So, to be able to carve an identity for yourself and for these books is a massive accomplishment. It really is.
I'm trying to think how many stories there actually are, because there's kin on kin, kin on whatever the other one was. Oh, bollocks. It's already fallen apart. I tempted to sound intellectual for about 5 seconds.
I mean, we could go on to the whole hero's journey, Campbell, esoteric, Beowulf archetypes and stuff like that shit. But who cares about that? Like, we're just going to talk about magic shit. So, we've gone on long enough. As I say, I've gone on long enough. Why don't you tell the capers at home exactly what Sam Hain is all about?
So Sam Hain is an occult detective. He investigates all the bizarre and weird and supernatural and, quite frankly, untoward shit that goes on in the world as a whole, primarily around London, because at the end of the day, he's not the most competent of people. He thinks he knows what he's doing, but he pretty much just fumbles his way through and has the right bits of knowledge for weird stuff. Normal stuff, he's completely clueless about.
Yeah, no, I was going to say not much else. Thankfully, though, he is aided in this by Alice Carroll. Oh, I wonder what that's a reference to!
Not at all derivative.
I mean, let's be honest, Carol, fairly common name. Alice, also common name. It can happen.
Combined.
Like, I mean, we mentioned Harry Potter earlier. Guarantee you there are at least one person out there, that some poor bastard whose name is literally Harold Potter.
There is bound to be.
I pity that man with all of my heart. I really do. And she's basically the audience insert character, as it were. Well, no, reader insert character. No, audience surrogate. Reader surrogate. Here's the thing. I don't review books that often, okay? It's very, very rare that I think I've done, if you include this one, 3 on this show. I'm much more comfortable reviewing films, TV shows, and stuff like that. So bear with me. I do apologise.
That's quite alright. Books are a weird thing to try and review anyway, I find.
Yeah, I think they are possibly the weirdest thing to review, because it's just like, hey, let's analyse these inky splotches on this page. I mean, okay, if you break it down like that, anything sounds pretty stupid. But yeah, it reminds me very much of like English class in school, and you have to decipher like the Kite Runner or Shakespeare or like World War One poetry. That's what we did in school. And it brings me back to that sort of mentality.
Yeah, it feels more like work, I find, if I have to like apply myself to reviewing a book. Writing a book, on the other hand, is much more of an adventure.
Yeah. Well, also, reading and analysing a book, I will say, takes way more time than reviewing a film. I don't spend nearly as much time on other reviews as I do on book reviews, but it's worth it in the end. And we should say, we mentioned before, but just to clarify, the Sam Hain story, I mean, you sent me very kindly a review copy that was condensed into one whole version, volume 1, but the story is actually several novellas.
Technically, yeah. And this actually goes back to like the origin of writing each story. Because when I finally came up with the concept of Sam Hain as a character and as a hazy idea of a weird world beyond the real one, that I just wrote this short story, and I popped it online for free because it was something to do with my time. And inexplicably, people not only downloaded it and then read it, but they also seemed to like it. And then,
nothing inexplicable about it. They liked it because it's good.
oh, well, thank you. But then I had people saying, like, so when's the next one? And I thought, hadn't really planned on the next one. But, okay, go on then.
Oh shit, I've got to do more? Oh god.
So I wrote another one. And then I had fun writing that. And then I wrote the next one and popped them on Kindle as just like a quick ebook kind of thing. And it was around about the time that I finished Grimditch and was beginning to look into working on the Regents that I realised it was accidentally turning into a career.
Oh
And
shit, is this my job?
Yeah, I'm very much an accidental author. I never intended any of this, and I'm very grateful it's happened.
You know what, you'd be amazed how many times that is actually the case. Some people take it as a hobby or to pass the time or just like for other creative writing exercises or just because like fuck it. And it turns into a career. I remember, I don't know if I told this story actually once on the show before, but if I haven't, I'll say it again. I remember once because I read these books when I was a kid, these fantasy novels. I can't remember what they were called, but they were written by a guy in the RAF who actually worked in RAF Bryce Norton, which is where I used to live near. I used to live near RAF Bryce Norton. My parents used to work there at one time or another, and he was part of like a flight crew or something. He was part of the RAF, and he was doing something. I can't remember what. This isn't the best anecdote, but he was, I don't know, daydreaming or something, and someone said, "Oh, why didn't you write a book or something?" And he's just like, you know what, I will, and that's kind of what he did. And then he published like a series of novels that proved to be quite popular for a while. Bugger if I can remember his name or the names of the books, but still.
That is like the best comeback to someone who goes, oh, why don't you just write a bloody book or something? Yeah, fair enough, I will. There we go.
Worked out pretty well, and it is a thing that often people fall into, and yeah, there's a lot of people who maybe actually tried to have a career as a writer and don't quite make it, and I wonder why that is.
It's a very difficult industry to try and understand, especially in the modern era. Like, going back to me originally doing the Kindle books, we live in a world where everything's changing from the old guard of traditional publishing houses and now moving forward to a much more in the hands of the user, in the hands of the artist kind of concept across all mediums, with artwork and film and video on things like YouTube and stories with Kindle.
Yeah, indie game publishers on Steam and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's very much the big corporations are now the people who provide platforms for people to present their work to the masses, and then they just make shed loads of money off of it. It's a very good system for all, unless, of course, you demand exclusivity or microtransactions or abuse the people who use your services or the creators who use your platforms. I'm not going to mention any names, but there's a lot of them!
It's a fair few of those mega conglomerates that like to milk people for everything they're worth.
Epic Game Store! Disney! So many. Oh, God. I don't like that. I don't like exclusivity. I just like things to be available for everyone on any sort of platform that's easily accessible to them. I don't like... I mean... Kindle is a very easy thing to do. It's very quick. You can easily download it for free and get stuff you like, but it's available on all sorts of platforms. It's not just like iPhones. It's available on Android and tablets and other stuff like that. Even probably available on desktop laptops or something like that if you have the right apps or something. I don't know. I haven't looked into it. So it's very much available, and I don't like it when people try to restrict certain things purely for the sake of, ooh, you can't get it into your part of our club. I know that's how things used to be, but like you said, we're moving on. Things are changing, and people need to kind of realise that fucking quickly. And I don't care how good it is. I want Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 to be available on PlayStation 4, not just Nintendo Switch. I want that. I want to play as Miss Marvel.
You and I both, sir.
I'm probably going to have to... And this means I'm going to have to shell out like a couple of £100 for a Nintendo Switch. And if I get a Nintendo Switch, not only am I going to have to get Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, I'm going to have to get Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu, because of course I will, because gotta catch them all, I want my Vulpix!
Then before you know it, you're having to remortgage the house.
Like I could afford a mortgage in the first place. You assume too much of me. But enough about my disastrous finances. Let's get back to Sam Hain. So the stories, the novellas in Volume 1, because they've been condensed into Volume 1, are thus. It's what's the first one is All Hallows Eve, if I remember. A Night in Knightsbridge, The Grimditch Butcher, The Regents, The Eye of the Oracle, and Convergence. And there's another one which I haven't read, called Sam Hain, A Krampus Carol.
That was just a fun one-off thing that I wrote in the run-up to Christmas. Just something going, maybe I should do like a Christmas special episode kind of thing. So I wrote it with that kind of spirit in mind.
Yeah, because why not? These are running continuity of books, and I'm surprised more things like that don't do it. Like sometimes books are set during the wintertime or something, but I find, with some glaring exceptions, there's rarely any books that focus on Christmas.
I can think of about 50 absolutely appalling Christmas films.
Oh yeah.
But I cannot think of a single book beyond, the traditional like Dickensian aspects.
I mean, there's obviously A Christmas Carol, and then there's slightly lesser known but still takes place at Christmas, Cricket on the Hearth by the Charles Dickens as well, that I only know because they made a rather appalling animated version in the 60s. And then there's the John Grisham novel, Skipping Christmas, which later got turned into that fucking awful movie, Christmas with the Cranks, whatever it's called. Just like, I hate that movie, loathe it, despise it. Haven't read the book, so I don't know. Also,
that's in the top 10 of the 50 terrible Christmas films I can think about.
God, don't...
It's painful.
It's annoying because it's based around such an interesting premise. A couple who enjoy Christmas very much with their daughter decide to skip Christmas after their daughter leaves, and the magic sort of goes out for it. Because I think a lot of parents can relate to that. Christmas doesn't feel the same if your children aren't there. And this meets with some consternation from some of their neighbours. I don't know anything about the original book, although it's by John Grisham, so I dread to think. But they took this premise in the movie, and they utterly like I said, it's not the idea, it's the execution, and they executed it horribly, making you think, so we're supposed to side with the neighbours because the cranks are being all mean and grumpy and Grinch-like. No, because they act like bullies and hypocrites. Okay, so we're supposed to side with the cranks, right? Because they're the ones who just want to be left alone to enjoy their lack of holiday in peace. No, because they act like arrogant arseholes the whole time round they're doing it. It's just I can't like anyone in this movie. They got Cheech Marin in this movie, and I can't even like him. You made me dislike Cheech Marin.
And they spend the opening 10 minutes having this lengthy debate about the rain outside the car in the 10 feet it would take them to get from the car to the store. Yeah. And for some unknown reason, that's a whole 10-minute scene.
Yeah.
That's not even funny.
And it's not Tom Hanks. No, it's not Tom. It's Tim. What's his face?
Tim Allen.
Tim Allen. That's right. I was about to say Buzz Lightyear. Tim Allen, and it's just Halloween. Jamie Lee Curtis. I'm terrible with names. Jamie Lee Curtis says, "Okay, so I need some stuff from the store," and Tim Allen is just "It's raining. I'm gonna get soaked." And she's just "But I need stuff from the store." Just maybe show a bit of sympathy for your husband who's about to get soaked, you cold, heartless witch. It's we could go on. We could go fucking on, but that movie really...
I could happily rant for another hour about terrible Christmas films.
Oh, God. When was the... Okay, so here's a question for you. Bit of a tangent, but that's what we do in this show. What was the last good Christmas film released? Not the last one you watched, because we all watch Muppet Christmas Carol every single year. What was the last one that was good one that was released?
Oh.
Lifetime movies do not count for obvious reasons.
Oh, what's the Miracle on number something street?
34th Street.
34th Street, that's the one.
That was made in the 1990s when Mara Wilson was up to the height of my knee. So, that is a poor reflection of the standard of Christmas films.
2 decades we have been bereft of decent Christmas films.
Actually, no, I'm gonna contradict you here. Actually, would you count this as a Christmas film, Love Actually?
Actually, yes, I would. Now you say it.
Because it's set at Christmas, but doesn't really deal with the themes of Christmas. It deals with themes of love that just so happens to coincide with Christmas. I think you could look at it either way, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I would class that as a Christmas film, and it's definitely one of my favourite guilty pleasures.
I'll be honest. It used to be. It's not anymore. It used to be my favourite film of all time. I will admit it's got some problems. Is it really a guilty pleasure?
Sort of, I think.
You don't sound sure.
I don't know. I think I love it too much.
Oh, Love Actually, I know it's wrong, but it feels so right. Oh, do the Rowan Atkinson scene again. Whole thing. And then a little director who did the whole Pretty Woman movie decided, you know what? I'm just going to base all my movies around that sort of premise from now on. Romantic comedies set around different holidays, and that's what I'm going to do until I die. And they're all going to be terrible and feature fantastic actors not giving a shit.
Just wait until he starts basing them on the pagan festivals as well.
Oh, well, as I say, he can't. He's dead. That's why he can't do it anymore.
Well, it doesn't mean he can't.
That's a good point. He will return.
Makes it very difficult, but not impossible.
What's his fucking name? I'm terrible with names. There's a pretty... Well, I'm looking at... Pretty woman walking down the street. Pretty woman... Gary Marshall. That's the guy. I mean, I like Pretty Woman, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't like some aspects of The Princess Diaries, and I feel so sad for saying that because I loathe Disney and I don't like that director, and the sequel is awful. I think we can all agree. Like some, you know what? It's just because they got they got not Julie Walters. No, fuck. Am I going senile at 27? Julie Andrews. It's just because they got Julie Andrews in that movie that I like it, and she has like a sort of romance with Hector Alessandro, and it's just like. I can't hate any movie that has Julie Andrews in it. I just can't. This is what one we have with Aquaman. We were talking about Sam Hain at one point.
I think we were somewhere.
Back we go. So we were talking about Alice Carroll. So as we say, she's the audience surrogate. Is there anything that particularly stands out? What was your vision for her as a character for Alice Carroll?
The way I approached both Sam and Alice as the two characters was thinking of them as two sides of the same coin. So Sam is the side that's got 1 foot in the weird world, and Alice is the one that's got 1 foot in the real world. And as I finished writing the first story and began to think about doing the others, I started to conceive of how their two personalities would work. And it occurred to me that Sam is the man that I wish I was in those kind of scenarios. Alice is probably the person I really would be in those environments.
Just like pointing out when stuff doesn't really make sense and then hiding behind a crate.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's not fair for me to say. She does way more than that in the story.
No, she is just as capable as Sam, but in very different ways. She'll bring to him a completely new perspective.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, as the more human of the two protagonists, she is definitely the one that would see an unimaginable nightmare and be terrified by it, as I would be in reality. And Sam is very much a person that would look at it and go, that's kind of cool and fascinating, but I've got to do something about it.
Yeah. I mean, I get terrified by non-unimaginable horrors from the beyond. I get terrified by random things. Someone, like, turns around a corner in front of me too quickly. I'm like, ah! Oh my lordy! I thought my number was up.
Someone queue jumps.
Yeah. Well,
That's a true horror.
oh God, no! You don't do that. Not in my house.
But on one hand, you want to maintain the politeness of not really confronting anything, but you also want to maintain the decorum of how queues function and that we must all wait our turn to get to order the cup of tea.
The big thing for me is when I'm at the cinema and people start talking, I'm just like, I should say something. I should tell them to shut up. You know what? If they say something again, I will. I'll let them, give them a chance to be quiet. Ooh, they said something again. Oh, but now too much time has passed and I can't say shut up because now they're actually being a bit quiet again. Oh, well, I'll get them next time.
All right,
any
best
day
out
now.
of 5.
Best out of 10. Best out of 20. And it goes on like that. I mean, I have done it in the past, but like also like, the big thing for me is I don't want to say shut up because then someone could say to me shut up because like I'm also speaking as well. I'm adding to the disruption. And it's just like I can't fight fire
domino
with fire.
effect of an entire theatre of shut up.
Everyone just shushing each other and no one hears the movie. Now we'll never know if John
2
Wick
hours.
finds love.
I did have a very British experience getting a cup of tea in Islington.
Ooh.
And there was this guy who was kind of stood to my side and we side-eyed each other, sort of going, don't you go in front of me, but not wanting to really say anything to each other. We both thought we had right of way in this queue. And sure enough, they say, who's next? And we both stepped forward at the same time. And then we both stepped backwards at the same time and gestured wildly, going, no, after you. No, I insist, after you. No, after you. No, absolutely, after you. We could have carried on for another 10 minutes like that. One of us had to break eventually. The miracle I'm not still there.
Who broke it first, though?
I think eventually he relented. I think I put too many no's in my sentence, just going, no, I insist, after you. Secretly going, don't you dare go first, but this is now the 20th time I've said, no, I insist, after you. But not after you, after me.
For those of you listening from another country, this is the epitome of being English. This is our curse. Like, people want to like, oh, the British never paid for their years of colonial conquest. This is how we pay. It's not quite the punishment we necessarily deserve, but it's a hell. It's a hell we live every single day.
Caught in an endless cycle of painful politeness. I think that is one of the circles of hell, actually.
Yeah, just everyone, just like saying, no, after you. No, please, I insist. Oh, no, I couldn't possibly. Until the end of time, with nothing actually being accomplished.
That's the Church of England concept of hell.
Yes! Oh, God.
There we go, we've come full circle.
Going full circle again to the cinema, I had experience last time I was at the cinema. I was leaving the cinema and, having just seen the film, and in order to exit the film sort of screening area, go back into the main foyer of the cinema, there's a big, long, wide, and I want to emphasize this word, wide, corridor. And I'm walking down, and there's a person walking towards me, and at this point you'd think one of us would shift sides, go slightly to the left or the right, just naturally drift off to allow space for the other person to go. This does not happen. We keep going, and we're in the straight line, we're coming closer and closer and closer together, and we get just close enough that we do what I call the oh no, who's going to go first dance. Just like, you step to the side, they step to the same side, the same side, the same side. There is an abundance of space on either side of us. Many feet! There is no reason for any of us to be in this scenario in the first place, and once we got in the scenario, there was no reason why the little, oh no, I couldn't possibly dance, went on as long as it did. There was no excuse. At least you were in a queue. There was no queue. There was no one else around.
And the beauty of that dance is it's always accompanied with that polite but heartless chuckle of just like, oh no, oh, silly me. No, terribly sorry. Oh no, I've got in the way again. Oh, what a couple of cards we are. And it goes on for eternity.
You bastard move. Oh God, it's awful. There must be so many Americans listening to this and thinking, what the fuck are they on about? But it's like, everyone who's from England will know. They will know. Oh God. And there's another character that's sort of a minor character, but he turns up quite a lot towards the by the end of the book. James Mortimer was a very close connection with Sam.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, and there's a history there. And what I like about it is you revealed, over the course of Volume 1, quite a bit about what happened between them and this other person who we shan't mention, because, we want you capers to read it yourselves.
Leave an element of mystery.
But you don't reveal everything, nor do you reveal too little and just, tease the audience. I really hate that when an author teases the audience with stuff, the reader, with stuff like, "Ooh, keep reading to find out more," and never revealing anything. And you got the exact right balance of mystery and revelation, I think.
I definitely love, going back to other pieces of literature, I love something that gives you a good mystery, something that you feel like you can almost grasp, but not entirely. And it still has that air that keeps it intriguing, maintains an element of interest, but also gives you just enough that you don't feel like it's just mystery for mystery's sake. And that's something I very much wanted to incorporate into their dynamic.
Because
with elements of their past, elements of who they are, how they've grown to be who they are, and where it's going to be moving forward in the future with things like Volume 2.
Yeah, because it's not about teasing your reader. It's about genuine development, both of the narrative and the characters. It's about pushing the story forward and learning things piece by piece by piece, as opposed to just constantly dangling the blur of progression above you like you're a fish and you're angling for them. That was a terrible metaphor, but I'm sticking with it. And
it's a good visual one.
A good visual one. Speaking of visuals, at least the copy you sent me, there are many illustrations in this novel of various
yes,
scenes.
Indeed.
Who, may I ask, did those illustrations?
That would be the absolutely incomparable talent of Camilla Winquist, who I met entirely through chance at a Comic-Con a good couple of years ago.
Which one?
She was... it was MCM October, I believe. The London October one, anyway, because they tend to do a slew of them all 1 week after the other.
Yeah, there's one up... last October I went to one in Glasgow.
I did the Glasgow... No, I didn't do last October's Glasgow one. I did 2 years ago Glasgow.
Oh, you just
missed me.
It's a
fun little holiday. by just 365 days.
Yeah. Strangers in the night.
But yeah, she was the guy on the table next to me was hiring for artists for his comic book, and people were coming by, taking down the details, handing over their business cards and their portfolios and so on. And he disappeared and went on a break, and I was still behind my table. And this woman comes along, and she asked about the artist position. And I said, the guy himself who's hiring isn't here at the moment, I'm afraid. But, actually, he hasn't got any of his cards either. Bugger. Okay. Take one of my cards. If you email me your work, I'll forward it to him, and we'll get back to you. And sure enough, that's exactly what she did. She sent the portfolio through, and I had a quick skim through it, and pretty much loved every single bit of it. And I forwarded it to him, but he had already found another artist that he wanted to work with. And I had never considered actually having artwork for the Sam Hain books done before. But looking at that portfolio, I just really wanted her artwork to be included in some fashion.
It's very good artwork. It reminded me very much. There's a version of, there's an edition of Coraline that I've got that features illustrations, and it reminded me very much of that. It felt very Neil Gaiman-esque.
Is that the one with the illustrations by Chris Riddell, perhaps?
I think so. I've got around.
I think it was Chris Riddell.
I don't so much have bookshelves as I do a bunch of blocks of wood with books in them. Like, it's not. I'm not organised in terms of my literature, so I can't pick it up. And
It's a
find
close approximate of a storage system.
Hang on one second. I think I can see it. Hang on. Coraline and Other Stories by Neil Gaiman. With illustrations by Dave McKean.
Ah, Dave McKean.
Yeah, and I mean, I wouldn't say they're a direct comparison to the illustrations in Sam Hain, but they're still very good, and they've got that sort of I mean, they're not colour or anything; they're just black and white as you do, but it's they're very sort of sketchy and very shadowy and shady and stuff like that. And it provides a really great atmosphere for Coraline and for Sam Hain as well. There's one I particularly like with Sam Hain running down the street being pursued by a car that I quite like.
That was one of the first versions that Camilla sent back to me. And I just looked at it and fell in love with the piece immediately. It was precisely the kind of thing I had in mind. And obviously it was a rough sketch, but she produced this amazing piece of art in like a couple of hours.
First time round.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's just like, that's fucking awesome. Here are the other scenes.
Go!
Meanwhile, I'm just doodling stick figures.
Do with them what you will, you talented bastard!
So I was incredibly lucky to meet her along the way. Because for me, finishing off Volume 1, actually getting it together as a hardback and a paperback compendium, it just made it so much more by the inclusion of her artwork, the cover design that she did as well. Just overall, just really brought the piece together perfectly.
Yeah, I think it really does. I think it sets it apart from, because like there is an industry of, I don't want to say cheap, but cheap paperbacks out there and cheap online ebooks and stuff, like, aren't necessarily bad, but aren't necessarily good either. And they're very bare bones, shoved out there. And this lends Sam Hain, not that it doesn't have this already due to the standard of writing, a degree of authenticity. It shows that it's a caliber above some cheap, pushed out, see what it can get, generic fantasy novel. There's actual effort here. And it's all very well for me to say that having read it, but someone who picks it up off the shelf or sees something about it online might not know that, but if they have a quick skim through and sees, oh, there's illustrations, okay, it helps. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it really gave it that something extra. And I'm trying to think what the word for that something is.
Je ne sais quoi?
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah, and it does help because, I mean, the illustrations, I mean, I had a pretty firm image in my mind of these characters as well, anyway, before I even saw any of the illustrations, which does help a lot. That's something, I think if I can really visualize a character in my mind, it speaks very highly of the standard of writing. And but the illustrations help. And Sam Hain does cut a rather impressive figure with his black grey coat and black fedora. This is partially why I said at the beginning it was rather derivative, because it reminded me very much of Harry Dresden from the Dresden books.
That is actually a very funny thing. Actually, as I'm sat here now, I can see I've got a Jim Butcher book on my bookshelf. Ooh. Purely because I have not read any of the Dresden Files yet, and I need to make a point of it to actually read it.
Oh, well, okay then. So it's just one of those coinky-dinkies that happens. That, honestly, the amount of the amount of times I've come up with a story only to find out someone else has done the exact same thing that I've never heard of before can be counted on multiple hands with multiple fingers. It really is a big thing. I mean, there's another book series that I read when I was a kid, another fantasy novel thing. I don't know if you read it. There's the Skullduggery Pleasant series. That
rings a bell.
I mean, it's a very good book series. It nearly got made into a movie starring Johnny Depp, but it fell through. It's a cult detectives thing again, but it's rather different because it's this guy, Skullduggery Pleasant, except he's a skeleton. He used to be a guy, now he's a skeleton, and now he has like a hat and a scarf, and he solves magic mysteries, and it's a really cool book stories for kids.
I was going to say, that sounds up my street anyway.
Yeah, and it's And one thing I like about Scudery Pleasant was it had its own unique magic system. And I've talked about that sort of thing on this show before, especially when talking about this sort of thing. And so, did you have any real intention or agenda when it came to crafting a unique magic system for the Sam Hain books?
Primarily thinking about magic as a system to incorporate into any form of narrative, it's profoundly complex. And one of the key approaches I had towards it was there is the fast and quick magic, which may not be as potent as one would hope. And then there's the version of magic that actually fully actualizes the essence of the spell, of that energy, by focused will, incantations, that kind of thing. And in the Sam Hain universe, magic is very much an extension of the individual's will, a thought form.
I mean, that's one of the things that sets it apart from other stories. It's you focus very much, especially on the magic and also like the themes and the thematic concepts, on this idea of manifestation of reality through will and thought, and both in like the crazy, tripped out worlds these characters visit, but also just in the average, everyday life sort of thing. And I find that very fascinating, this idea of willing things into being, not through like waving a stick around and saying the right words, but through the power of pure thought. I find that very intriguing as a concept.
And it's something that I actually had a lot of fun playing around with in the next novella that's coming out, which is actually released on the 30th of May, if I'm correct.
Coming out very soon, Capers. This episode is going to go out, assuming things go according to plan, as they usually do, on the 22nd of May. And you're going to another MCM this Friday, are you not? Friday the 24th.
Yes, indeed.
Yes,
London MCM.
London MCM. Are you going to be there the whole weekend?
I will be, from bright and early Friday morning till probably the small hours of Monday morning.
Right, so
although the convention will close like a few hours before that, but knowing how travel back goes.
So, Capers, if you're in the London area and you fancy nipping down to MCM, check out Bron and his place where he's set up to find out more about. It's called Storm in a Teacup.
That's the one.
That's the one. And so you can find out more about that. And so I can only assume the entire Sam Hain collection will be available at the convention.
Absolutely. So the first 6 novellas in Volume 1 are available as like both paperback novellas and the hardback and paperback compendium illustrated and revised edition. And a Krampus Carol as well. That's just like one-off kind of thing. And then we've got the beginnings of Volume 2 with Dead Men Sell No Sales and Storm in a Teacup.
So there's a lot of stuff to really be excited about. Like, because you could... Here's the thing. Volume 1 ties things up in a fairly neat little bow, with perhaps one little thematic cliffhanger, which we won't mention. But here's the thing. You could have just left it there. You could have just done like, right, I've done it, moving on now. But you can definitely continue the story. And I think it's a story that's worth continuing. I want to find out what happens to these characters.
For me, it's become a bit like breathing. The minute I finish one story, I don't really take a time to relax either. I finish one story, get it through the whole process of going off to the editors, getting off to the printers, and all that kind of stuff. And then I'm immediately thinking, okay, what's next on the agenda?
It's just like, you wake up, Sam Hain. Go to sleep, Sam Hain. You eat, Sam Hain. I think that's a very... I'm glad you're not sick of it, is what I'm saying. I'm glad you're keeping with it, and you're churning out books faster than some other authors I could mention.
Naming no names.
Naming no names. William Shakespeare, you haven't written anything in years. Come on, man, get up off your ass.
500 fucking years.
When are we gonna...
Hasn't done anything new.
When are we gonna get Cymbeline 2? Wait, is it called Cymbeline? I can never remember how it's pronounced.
Yeah, Cymbeline.
Cymbeline, oh,
and then Love's Labour's 1. Where's that one?
I'm a Tempest guy, that's the thing, you see. That was my big thing. A random question, just because I can. What's your favourite Shakespeare play?
Ooh, is it too cliche to say Hamlet?
No, not at all. There's a reason why it's one of the most famous ones. It's like, I mean, it's very much entered into pop culture and stuff like that by people who haven't actually, read it or seen it performed. But yeah, it's a very, very good story, if not a tiny bit bleak. But then again, it's set in Scandinavia. What did you expect?
Yeah, I love Hamlet as a tragedy, and then thinking about it, probably Much Ado About Nothing as a comedy.
Well,
Just because some of the character decisions are utterly ludicrous.
Yeah, very much so. Speaking of Hamlet, then, in that case, as you're such a fan of it, what do you think about this new movie coming out starring Daisy Ridley, Ophelia?
That could be interesting.
Because it's not the first time Ophelia...
I know very little about it.
Yeah, I mean, all I know about it is it's the story of Hamlet, but with the character of Ophelia as the POV character, the point of view character. And I think that's been done before, but not that often. And it was interesting to see a movie about it, and I don't know, I think it could be intriguing. I'm not as into Hamlet as other people. I don't know that much about it, though I have read it, and have I seen it? No, I haven't seen it. I've seen Shakespeare plays performed, both in live action, both in movies, and both in live action, actually in the theatre, as it were, and also in the cinema.
Physical action.
Because like the cinema, at least in the UK, they broadcast some plays with like a National Theatre Live and stuff. So I've been able to see a few plays at my local cinema, which is really good. Despite the fact that there is a cinema not far from me that I really want to attend, because there's a play coming out. I think it actually might be out now. In fact, it definitely is out now. I think it's called Bank Robbery Gone Wrong. It's by the guys who did the play that goes wrong.
Oh, yeah.
And I really want to see that. But guess what? Theatre tickets, fucking expensive.
That is the downside. I was like, well, I kind of want lunch.
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, I would like to see, Romeo and Juliet performed live by people who play the part of both Romeo and Juliet. But you know what? I also want to pay rent.
The good thing about some of the inner London theatres, because you've got kind of like with, I think it was in the Regents that I bring up the Old Red Lion in Islington, which is basically just got a theatre space that does a load of fringe performances and art house pieces, and it's an incredible experience, if sometimes very avant-garde.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some weird shit in my time, because like Edinburgh's very art-based, very performance-based, and you see some weird shit, not just at Halloween. And this seems like something that would definitely be performed by someone who didn't know any better. And you know what I loved? I loved about that, because in case the cavemen haven't cottoned on yet, that's a joke in the actual book, And for a second, when I read that joke, I thought, hang on a sec, am I reading like a Terry Pratchett novel or a Douglas Adams novel? Because that was one of the funniest things I've ever read. It was... it's very much in that vein of humour.
I can't lie to you, when I wrote that, I did laugh to myself to quite some time. And probably looked like a maniac from anyone else's external perspective, because I had no company. Just contently chuckling away to myself over a stupid joke.
Were you in a public space or private space?
Sadly, it was in a public space.
See, I've done that. Right, here's the thing. I remember ages ago, I was travelling with some friends on a train, and it was a long journey, so we weren't always talking to each other all the time. And I was reading a book. It was a Mock the Week book, actually. They just take like the jokes from Mock the Week and put it into a book. Why not? BBC's got to make money fucking somehow. And I started laughing because, it's a funny book. Mock the Week is funny. And after I finished the book, I put it down and saw my friend sort of staring at me, ashen. Just like, Scott, why were you laughing? It was like, it was a funny book. You can't do that. You seem like a madman. Because I was reading a funny book. Like, the Mock the Week title was clearly displayed on the book. No one would think I was reading, like, the satanic verses. And thinking, like, why is this madman laughing? Like, it's weirder to laugh at something that isn't funny, like, in a public space, than something that is funny. I've always maintained, I don't care. I maintained that I was right to laugh. I don't care if I do get weird looks. But then
I think therein lies the other British curse, the fact that we can't really express emotion in any authentic kind of way, be it sorrow or joy. We find something funny, oh, maybe we shouldn't laugh, just because people might think I'm weird if I laugh.
Every single fact of my biology and evolution and cultural programming is telling me that I should laugh at this, but what if people don't like it? I have to admit, though, it would have been kind of weird for people at the other end of the carriage just to hear the sound.
On the train, they might look at me weird.
Not even looking at me weird. Just imagine a bunch of people at the other end of the carriage hearing someone chuckle to themselves over and over again, and other bits of like dialogue coming from them. They're just like, what's he laughing about? They don't know I'm reading a book. But I don't care about them.
You're secretly plotting and scheming.
I've developed a bit of an evil laugh of late, and it's rather disturbing. It's rather concerning indeed. So we talked a lot about Sam Hain. You've got another book, another novella out, which I haven't had a chance to read. Far Beneath the Distant Stars. It's a sci-fi thingamabob, isn't it?
Ah, yes, indeed. Sci-fi was pretty much my upbringing, with every facet of my life when it came to absorbing media and fictions, be it in book form, television, film, everything. And Sam Hain was kind of a surprising thing because I never really expected I'd go down the curd. So Far Beneath the Distant Stars was very much my approach to channeling some of the elements that I loved from the sci-fi literature I'd grown up reading.
I think we've all got a sci-fi novel in us somewhere. So what's that about, without giving too much away?
So principally it's about an exploratory vessel heading quite far out into space.
It's 5-year mission to explore new worlds and encounter new species, to boldly go where no man has gone before. This is Spock. That, ladies and gentlemen...
Shatner, if you could put Scott back on, please, that'd be perfect. Thank you.
I think you'll find that was a perfect William Shatner impression. You know what I do? I don't even do William Shatner. I do the William Shatner impression they do in that episode of Animaniacs. I don't know if you've seen that, where he's doing karaoke to kids, and he's just doing like nursery rhymes in that style that he does, like when he did Rocket Man, and it's just... oh god, I just do that, and it's funny.
I do love Shatner.
Do.
But yeah, basically it's an exploratory mission to a far-off moon, and things take a turn for the cosmic horror.
Oh god, it's like Lovecraft in space.
It has actually been described as Arthur C. Clarke meets H.P. Lovecraft, and I kind of love that.
Somewhere, Clive Barker is getting very nervous. No, that's my thing! That sounds really good. We can't really talk that much about it because I haven't read it and you don't want to give too much away. But that sounds really cool. And so, apart from Sam Hain, is there anything else you got in the pipeline? Anything you might like to be working on in the future you want the Capers to know about?
There is a comic concept that is sort of in the pipelines, and unfortunately I can't really say much more than that on it at the moment.
Ooh, colour me
purely
intrigued.
Because it's a conceptual thing.
Absolutely.
And I do more with Distant Stars as well. I want to play a bit more in that sci-fi universe kind of thing.
I mean, because I think you should, because I haven't read it, obviously, so I can't speak to its quality, but I think Far Beneath the Distant Stars is a fucking amazing title. That conjures up so much imagery in my mind.
Titles that come to me first. Stories come later, sadly.
Often, it's the reverse with me. I come up with the concept first and the title later, after a great many hours of banging my head against the wall like, no, come up with a fucking title, you loser. It's like anything. I think people write...
A couple of the...
Go on, sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, like, with some of the titles, there's a fair few stories behind a couple of them. So, things like Storm in a Teacup came as the secondary joke that popped into my head after I had this concept of, and this is not a colossal spoiler, because it's revealed at the end of chapter 2 of the new book, but Thor has lost his hammer. One of them to try and smith a new hammer.
Rocket, have
And
you
I
seen
kind of
my
enjoyed
hammer? No, I haven't seen it. I could have sworn I put it down here somewhere. Quill, is it you if you? Only the worthy can have it.
It was so difficult to write it and not have Chris Hemsworth's voice in the back of my head. But so yeah, Thor ends up getting a job in a cafe because he's now trapped on Earth.
Greetings,
And that's where Storm in a Teacup came from.
Greetings, weary traveller. What beverages would you desire? Builder's brew? Certainly.
Alas, he's not so jovial about working in a cafe. He's very indignant about the fact that he has to serve these mere mortals their coffee.
No one better fucking tell Loki. I'll never hear the end of it. Now that is brilliant though. That is such a, I like that title. You got me excited now. Damn you. Right, so I think on that note, unless there's anything else you want to announce, we've got to wrap.
Technically out next weekend.
I can't wait. Okay, I think we're going to wrap it up there unless you've got anything else to tell the capers.
No, I think that's pretty much it. I can't really go too much into Storm in a Teacup without spoiling too much of it, other than the fact that Thor has lost his hammer. Thor has lost his hammer.
Thor has lost his happy! Oh no!
That as well!
Oh, I'm just feeling a bit depressed today.
Pissed off about the whole affair. He moved to Hammersmith to try and find someone to smith him a new hammer.
Oh god. Oh, the possibilities. Well, thank you very much, Bron, for joining us today.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Scott.
And if you enjoyed the show, Capers, please tell your friends. Shout it from the rooftops! And if you haven't already, go back and listen to some of our other super episodes, like our Rivers of London episode we did a while back. You can listen to the show on iTunes, Podbean, YouTube, Spotify, or at podcapers.com. We have a Patreon. Check out the rewards. Patreon.com/AP2HYC. If you want to get in touch with us, suggest show topics, or maybe come on the show yourself, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at AP2HYC, or email us at podcapers@ap2hyc.com. Thank you very much to Dan Harris for our logo, the lovely microphone, the red and blue 3D glasses, those are mine, and thank you for listening! This has been Podcapers, the official podcast or a place to hang your cape. Cue the music!